Good evening, and we can't believe it, we're back again for episode 9 of Autism Journeys. And tonight the show starts with Sharon McCarthy, who chats with Marianne Cotter, and afterwards we'll be speaking to Brian Cussen, sharing his journey as a youngster with autism, and his mum Grace offering coping strategies that she finds helpful. Now I'm delighted to welcome Marianne Cotter, proprietor of the Westbury Swimming School and creator of the Happy Fish swim programme, to the show. Hi Marianne, how are you? Delighted to have you on the show.
Hi Sharon, it's great to be here. Thanks very much for your kind invitation.
I suppose, Marianne, just to begin, I know that the Happy Fish swim programme is a therapeutic swim programme, so I might ask you a little bit about that. But just before we begin, I might ask you, do you have any background in autism or in special needs education or swimming or whatever?
I suppose I do. Back in 1999, I worked in a summer camp in the US in Wisconsin for adults and children with special needs. So I would have had a bit of exposure that way. And then I suppose most recently, I have a family member at home with the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder.
And that family member, do they swim?
Absolutely, religiously every week for like 3 or 4 hours. I'm very tired after it, so yeah. Okay,
fabulous. Marianne, can I ask you, with regards to your early career, obviously you're a swim instructor and that you've trained for many, many years. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how this all came about?
Yeah, I can, and I promise I won't be too boring. So I swam from a very young age myself, and then I'd say from around the age of 10, I swam competitively for City of Cork, which is now gone.
Wow.
And then later on, the swimming fizzled out and I got more into life-saving and lifeguarding. And then by the time I was 16, I did my swimming teachers, and it's kind of been onwards and upwards from there, really.
Fabulous. So tell me, is ASD the first disability group that you have worked with in swimming, or have you worked with other people with, we'd say, cerebral palsy or Down syndrome or whatever other disability?
I have. I suppose it's been a spectrum across the board with autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. I suppose there have been chromosomal disorders that would have presented with, symptoms like autism. So yeah, I've had broad exposure across the board to a variety.
Okay, can I ask you, Marianne, with regards to ASD specific swim classes, what was your motivation for that?
I suppose it was my son. I felt that sometimes, even though we want to teach swimming, we do it in a very complicated way that might prevent other children from learning. And I just wanted to keep the goals the same, but simplify the learning process and adapt it to suit the children's needs more properly and present it in a more understandable manner for the children. So I would use things like a schedule. So every week we have a start, middle and an end, and then for children whose language might not be developed or in the early stages, we supplement that then with visual pictures of what the expectation is at each class.
Okay, so something similar to PECS.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
With regards to ASD specific training, I know I spoke to you briefly earlier and you discussed very passionately about all children having potential and all children being able to access swimming at whatever level or whatever way in which suits them. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I guess if I was to look at it honestly, and I would go back to the definition of swimming in the dictionary, and it does say that swimming is movement in the water. So I'm always very conscious about, the sensory elements coming into play when children are swimming. Some children don't like to put their face in the water. So what I would tend to see is possibly a very vertical position where their legs would be down, their head is very high up in the water, but they're still moving very nicely through the water.
Yeah.
A lot of children, they learn over time that they feel more comfortable on their back, so they might spend longer periods on their back because they get it deadens all the noises for them. Some children come and they wear ear defenders maybe at the start because it's we want them to go swimming, but maybe they don't understand why, and between the anxiety of the experience and the noises on the day, it can be very upsetting for them, so they might wear their ear defenders, and then over a period of weeks they might come in one day and they don't have them at all. Some children wear wetsuits because they like to feel deep pressure all the time, and not just the swimsuit doesn't suffice on its own. Some children like to wear goggles helmets, others don't, they wear hats. You know, we're very open to whatever the children bring on the day, and I just work as best as I can with them to try and draw out the potential that's there on the day. I suppose that's my job.
It sounds really, Marianne, like you're very respectful of the space that the child is in, and that you try and encompass the child as a whole. It isn't about conforming to what traditional swimming is. It is about allowing the child to move through the water in whatever which way they can safely, and so long as they're enjoying themselves and so on. I suppose it's about adapting your idea of swimming, really, in some instances.
I couldn't agree more with you. It's just, as you said, they're just being very respectful to the children. If I you know, sometimes you come to a head, and you know, how you approach things with children, or the words you might use, could make or break a situation and turn them off. So if they're happily moving through water, and once they're safe, I'm really delighted with their progress, because often you come in and they're, you know, the water is too much or the noise is too much, and then over the weeks there they are and they're swimming, and it becomes, I suppose, a very normal family experience, where they might just say one day we'll all go to the pool. And I love when the skills transfer over, or the children learn the language. They might have a word from swimming, like a parent said that they went away to Spain and the child asked for a noodle and they got it, and they were just delighted to see that they were able to use the instructional language from the swimming and put it in a context that wouldn't be in the normal environment.
It sounds fab. Tell me, Marianne, with regards to the ages of the children that would come to you, what age do you cater for? Is it older children, younger children?
In the last number of months, the children seem to be getting younger. So children, I'm getting phone calls from parents of children about 18 months. And then they're generally up to about 11. Would be the average age. But where I can, I try and make the class, again, as respectful, and have children of similar ages and similar abilities in the class, because I like it to be a social thing for the children and the parents, and it to be a really important event for them, that they're getting the best learning setting that they can.
With regards to lessons, do you offer individual lessons for children that would perhaps struggle hugely in the social situations, to kind of gradually introduce the concept of swimming first?
Sometimes what I do is I do a lot of work over the phone with parents. So I might send them a social story about coming swimming, because I have found in the past parents might want their children to go swimming, or the children might want, but I suppose the work up to the event is too much. So I might talk to the children over the phone, or I might send photos of myself, or I send photos of the visual schedules, and that tends to help then. And I might meet them once or twice. So there is sometimes a bit of a prelude to the lesson that goes on in the background.
Good. Can I ask you, Marianne, with regards to challenges that you'd regularly meet alongside of those kind of preparatory types of activities, is there any other challenges that parents would regularly meet that you find they do overcome, and that parents shouldn't be put off by?
I think a lot of it is the consistency, coming all the time. I think sometimes, if through illness or just having a bad morning, if a lesson is missed, it can kind of undo the good work. So I think consistency would always be very important, and I think discussions around the event are hugely important as well. I think it can be a challenge for children, especially if they're non-verbal, or again where their language hasn't developed. They mightn't understand, because if we get into a car can take us lots of places. It could take us to Granny's, or it could take us to the shop, or so I think conversations at home, and I'm all for encouraging parents to discuss why they're coming to the pool and where they're going, so that the children are as best prepared as they possibly can be.
I suppose it sounds good to ensure that every eventuality is covered when you're discussing stuff around swimming with the child, to best prepare them. So I suppose preparation probably is the biggest factor in the success, moving forward.
Absolutely, and I think things like getting the children involved and getting ready, because you're giving them the words, the instructional words, this is your hat, this is your towel, and what you want to see over time is that that they're learning the skills for themselves, because
Yeah.
that's all we ever want for our children, that, you know, we will give them the skills, but we're always hoping that they learn and become independent. And I love that bit the most. I really do, when they say, Marianne, it's okay, I can do it myself. And I'm I love that. I know I've made it then when they do that for me.
I love it. Marianne, can I ask you as well about the, I know that you were talking about parent and child aspect to the class, to kind of incorporate both parent and child so that it is a joint experience almost. Can you explain to me?
Yeah, I know from my own personal circumstances, a lot of the times I went to the diagnostic meetings myself, and it meant that my significant other got cut out. And I suppose through the years when I've been talking, it's nearly always the mums ring.
Yeah.
And they say, and the dads don't ever get to do anything. And I try to incorporate as much as I can into the swimming lesson, and that was one of the things I thought was very important, because anxiety for children with ASD can be huge. And I just think having someone there that understands them, because every child is understood best by their own parent. And I think, you know, it's a morale boost. You did a great job today. The children's faces light up. You know, it's fantastic. And I just think it's so important. The family, when they have the right tools, will move mountains for their children. And I just wanted to incorporate that in. And I also found, from my own personal experience, it was very lonely. And I just liked to be able to share what I knew with other people and help them move on. And I think having a class done in that format is beneficial for everybody, the children and the parents as well.
Absolutely. Marianne, can you give me a breakdown of your class, how you break it down, start, middle and end and all that?
Perfect. So the warm-up, we tend to do a sensory warm-up, and they're very specific instructions isolating parts of the body, because some children might not be necessarily familiar with their parts of the body. So if we want to get the legs warmed up, we might be doing jumping. If we want to do our hands, we might do splashing or crashing, so that we're really isolating specific areas of the body. So we'll do maybe about the first 5 minutes on our warm-up, and we'll warm up all the areas and the muscle groups that we're going to be using during the class. And then we'll break it down into our front. So we'll do our legs a few different ways, because every time you change position, you get different feedback in your body, and that's really important for kids with ASD, the vestibular input. So we might do our legs on our front, on our back, on our side, and we're again working different muscles, the gross motor skills. Then we might move on to our back, and we'll do something similar along that. And we'll do, which is it's a firm favourite in the class, rotating, so rolling around. And it feeds the ears, and again gives great vestibular input and relaxes the children very much so. And then towards the end, when the kids are getting very tired, because I suppose in the pool environment you've got, it's the closest thing to no gravity, so it's a much harder workout on the muscles. You've got the deep pressure from the water, so it's like getting a little hug all the time. And then I will be honest and say that my classes are hard work, because I suppose no child is going just to walk around. There's a bit of a workout, and then towards the end we'll do, you know, a cool down, or we'll do some playtime, and sometimes it's structured, other times it's unstructured, because I think it's important to have the balance of both.
And I suppose taking into account children's individual needs in those classes as to whether or not they need to be structured or free time play at the end or whatever. Can I ask you, Marianne, about the positives or the benefits that you find with regards to the children that you work with? Are there any specific kind of positives and benefits that you think?
I suppose specifically with the gross motor, we're working all our major muscle groups, so the arms, the legs. One of my favourite activities is climbing out. A lot of children with ASD find that very hard, so weight bearing through the shoulders, and it's very good for writing skills later on, so that's one thing. And if any of my parents are listening, they'll be laughing now, because they know the golden rule that the kids have to do it themselves. I'm really mean about that. Sometimes if they're a little bit smaller, they get a wee little bit of help, but a lot of the time the kids have to do it on their own. The sensory regulation, so some of the kids, from the time they come in, they just want to float on their back, because that's what they need on that day. The instructional language, hugely important. They might not understand all the instructions, but they have certain elements of the words, like noodle or face time in the water. So I see huge benefits. And I suppose the social engagement, you know, I do one-on-one pieces with the kids, and over time again they learn to engage with me who
Yeah.
I wouldn't be a parent. And then, they're around children of their own age, and they're not upset by being in a
Yeah.
crowd, so to speak.
Yeah, so I suppose there's huge socialisation benefits as well to the swimming lesson, to that kind of poolside talk and all that. And I suppose the other thing that jumps out at it for me is that sensory processing as well as the sensory regulation, that you can in fact stimulate those sensory systems should you need to, and so on and so forth, especially with your warm-ups and all that.
Absolutely, because some children come in and they're very, I'm conscious when they come in, I'm watching the kids, I might have an idea of what I'm going to do, and sometimes I might change it because sometimes children are very sensory high.
Yeah.
And something like jumping might send them over the edge.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they're coming in and they're very sensory low, so they might
you
need a jump, so
up.
you might build them up that way. Yeah,
I know what you mean. With regards to where you're located and stuff, Marianne, is it local? Is it a local business? Is it easily accessed? How do people contact you? How do they get their children's names on the lists? Whatever. Do you have any information on that you can share with our listeners?
I have. So I have 2 Facebook pages on the go.
Okay.
I suppose I found that some children who attend a mainstream setting want to go swimming, but other facilities may not have the capabilities to help them. So their children in more mainstream settings will come to me, and you can look at my Westbury Swim School Facebook page that way, and my contact number is on that.
Okay.
And then for the more therapeutic side of it, it's Happy Fish, and I also have a Facebook page there, and my email address is on that also.
Okay.
And as regards lessons, the lessons I hold are in the Cope Foundation pool in Montenotte on a Saturday morning. There's mainstream settings lessons there, and there's also Happy Fish classes. And then in the afternoons on a Saturday, I have lessons in the Levana Centre in Ballintemple, and there are some mainstream classes there, and there's Happy Fish classes as well.
Okay. Class sizes?
For Happy Fish, it's limited just to 6 children and their parents, so there's only 13 people in the whole pool. There's nobody else there.
And are they hour-long classes or half-hour-long classes?
They're 35 minutes of class time, and then 5 minutes of playtime, so it's a 40-minute setting.
Okay, and are there many of those classes available
At the moment, there's just 3 a week, but I'm working on more pool time and more classes, so people have to bear with me, but I am working on it, and hopefully in the future I'll have more classes on a more regular basis.
Okay, now Marianne, you said that you've got a Facebook page, so Happy Fish Facebook page, and you've also got the Westbury Swim School Facebook page.
Yes.
You might just give me your email address and your phone number so that people, if they want to contact you, they can take note of it now.
Okay, so it's westburyswimschool@gmail.com, and my contact number is 085 854 9246. And then for Happy Fish, it's happyfishkids@gmail.com, and then it's the same contact number, 085 854 9246. I can't work 2 phones. I'm a disaster with technology that way.
No, that's great. Listen, Marianne, thank you so much for coming on the show this evening, and I wish you all the best, I suppose, in the future. I've no doubt that it's onwards and upwards from here. It seems that you're affecting lots of little kids' lives at the moment in a very positive way, so hopefully you do have the opportunity to expand and to grow it and to affect very positively a far greater number of kids. Marianne, thanks very much, and we'll speak again soon, no doubt.
Thank you, Sharon. Bye.
Following on from that, Sharon, I've received an email from a mother, and she's got a quick question about her son David, and she'd really appreciate if you would be able to answer. So her son David, he's just started in 4th class. As you can imagine, there's huge social pressure on him at the moment, and he's struggling to fit in with his class group, and she's trying to find some extracurriculum activities he might be able to take part in, just to expand his social circles and help build up his self-esteem. She said her son David has also been diagnosed with developmental coordination disorder, so sports aren't his forte, and she's struggling to find something outside of the local GA club to send him to. So Sharon, in your experience, have you found anything particularly helpful to your children in terms of extracurricular activities?
Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that developmental coordination disorder is another word for that would be dyspraxia. You're looking at children that have difficulty with crossover body movements, with executive functioning, with organisational skills and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that children can't participate in extracurricular activities. I suppose following on first of all from Marianne Cotter's interview there, swimming is an absolutely fantastic extracurricular activity to be involved in. A child can swim solitarily in the pool, but they can in fact participate in that poolside talk, in that interacting with children on very limited times as they begin, and then getting into the pool. It takes the pressure off. There's only short times in that. So for a child starting to develop social skills, it would be actually a very good time to do that. With regards to special interests, I suppose, children with autism often tend to have special interests, particularly those Lego clubs, or those singing or music or chess. Or I know that we spoke to Michael Barton recently, and he spoke about a cheese appreciation club. So I would always recommend that a parent would first look to a child's special interest to see.
So actually ask the child, what would you like to do outside of school?
Absolutely, and to look at their special interest, and if there is something available around their special interest, it's always good to go there as a first port of call, because you've got children interacting with children that have similar interests. I'm going to hand it over to you for a moment, Anne-Marie, and maybe speak about a little bit about acting and theatre, because I know that they're absolutely fantastic tools that we use in our house as extracurricular activities too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very passionate about acting, and I find children on the spectrum are actually outstanding in drama because they're so honest.
Yeah.
And they just don't hold back. And I think because they're not boxed in, they're allowed to be themselves. But it teaches really good social and emotional skills in drama. You can teach without them realising things about like personal space by using a hula hoop and saying, let's walk around the room with a hula hoop. And now somebody climb inside that hula hoop. How does that make you feel? They feel claustrophobic. So you can teach, well, then you shouldn't go up to somebody and be so close.
Yeah.
You know, you can teach them, right, everybody, let's do a happy face, a sad face, an angry face. You can teach them sharing. Role play is absolutely superb, where you can get them to act out. You can do bullying scenarios. How does that feel? How does that make you feel? How does it feel to be happy? How does it feel to be sad? I mean, the list is endless in drama.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I find drama is absolutely fabulous in our house, and it is a go-to space, and it does encourage the children to act out, even if they're not acting out themselves and role-playing themselves, actually using little figures. I find in our house that they tend to use figures to role-play out those scenarios that are coming up for them. I suppose the other thing that is very important to say is that in particular around drama is that it can hugely boost self-confidence when a child is succeeding and when a child is able to work through those emotional scenarios that they might be facing. I suppose music is really, really, really important in our house. Music is fantastic as a go-to space, a safe space, a quiet space, something to use as a calming strategy. But also, I know that music can be used as an extra, as a way into an extracurricular activity, or to build up a social skill set. If a child is interested in a particular genre of music, be it opera or be it country western or whatever, it can.
And they love to sing along, don't they?
Oh, absolutely, and it can build up that kind of interaction with other children, again, who have the same interest. But also music clubs, if a child joins a choir, if a child joins a singing group, a piano group, a band, it can, and children are never too young to use music in that manner means. Now, I do have to say about sports, though. I know that this mum in particular is talking about a child with DCD. DCD, while it can be very difficult for a child to participate in sports because of those coordination difficulties, it can in fact help improve executive functioning, motor planning, understanding how to understand, plan and carry out activities. It can instill those skills in those children. It can also provide a great ready-made set of peers that the child can interact with and that the child can socialise with, and the child can work on social skills without ever even realising, as you say, that they're doing it, because they have to interact. They have to figure out, where am I going to go and what am I going to do.
Maybe what we'll do, Sharon, on the next show, we'll get a list of all-inclusive sport teams and clubs
absolutely.
and read them out. And obviously the two of us are delighted to say who we've got on the next programme. Richard Mylan.
Oh, absolutely.
From the BBC series, Jaco and I, and he's an absolute gentleman and we're dying to chat with him. But I think that would be a great idea because people are becoming more aware and there are more inclusive things for children to do.
I do think one final thing to say though, Anne-Marie, is definitely that I wouldn't hold a child back because they've got a diagnosis of autism or DCD or anything else. Good extracurricular activities will nurture a child's skill or interest and will allow them to develop those social skills that they need right throughout their life. So I wouldn't hold them back. I'd allow them to move forward and just keep looking because everybody finds somewhere that they do fit in.
Brilliant. Onwards and upwards. Welcome back to show 9 of Autism Journeys radio show, and now we're delighted to have Brian Cussen in to speak with us. Brian, tell me, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
When I was 4, I was diagnosed with a language disorder. When I was 5, I was diagnosed with dyspraxia, and when I was 7, when I was diagnosed with autism.
Okay, so you've had 3 different diagnoses.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you, how did you learn that you had, I suppose, autism anyway, first of all?
Simply my parents just told me straight out.
They just said, Brian, you have autism.
Yeah.
Okay, and how did you feel about that?
Daunting, because I had never heard of such a thing, probably because I was so young, but as I got older, I kind of figured out more what the meaning of it really is.
Okay, so it's important, so you think, for people to learn about what autism is if they're told that they have autism.
Exactly.
Okay, can I ask you, Brian, what challenges happen for you because of your autism?
The challenges that happen for me because of my autism is that I struggle with some things, but autism has also benefited me in other ways. Like, for instance, I have difficulty with conversation with people who are the same age as me, and I've had issues when I was younger with my coordination and the fact that I have low muscle tone as well.
Okay. And what strategies then, Brian, would you use that would help you to deal with those that maybe you could tell other boys and girls your age about?
I didn't really have any strategies. I kind of just learned to kind of get on with it, kind of, and figure it out in my own way.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a different question. So I'm going to ask you, we'd say, with regards to looking at somebody in the face.
Yeah.
Have you just ploughed through, and do you make yourself look at someone in the eyes, or do you look at a different part of the face that maybe feels a bit more comfortable to look at?
I would try and mainly look at the eyes.
Okay, well you're very, very good, because I know lots of people find that hard to do. So I suppose it's good that you can, because then it means that you're not missing out on information that people are sharing with you through facial expression and that kind of a crap.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, do you have any suggestions of any useful strategies at all that you would recommend that others might use for communication, for coordination, for social skills, for learning, for anything?
Well, for my coordination, I went swimming I've been doing swimming in the Merrick for a number of years, and that has really helped me to boost my coordination. With regards to social skills and conversations, just learning maybe to having conversations with your family, or maybe joining something that you might be interested in.
Good. And tell me, Brian, would you kind of practice scenarios? I know in our house we sometimes would have practiced different scenarios that might arise. Would you do that kind of stuff at home with your mom or dad or whatever before you go into new situations?
Not really. Like, we would definitely talk about it, and my mom and my dad would try and explain it to me in the best way that they possibly can, so I can have a better understanding of what's about in front of me. Like,
Fab. fab. Okay, I'm going to ask you another question, Brian. I know that you have dyspraxia, as you said, and I know that you've also got a genetic condition as co-occurring conditions. How did they impact on you every day on a day-to-day basis?
The dyspraxia, it impacts on me because of my coordination and balance, and that's something I've had to work on over time in order to improve. And with my genetic condition, I have low muscle tone, and I get tired easier than others after doing exercise. But over the years, I've figured with ways of how to cope with that.
Okay, so you persevere and you push through. Even when you're tired, you still make sure that you're exercising and that you're minding yourself.
Yeah.
That's very positive. That's a really good thing to hear, because I know lots of young people, now even older people like myself, tend to opt out, tend to go the easy road rather than look after ourselves, I suppose. Tell me now, Brian, I'm going to ask you another question, and this is something that I'm really impressed with, actually. I know that you wrote a wonderful poem recently that the staff of Southleigh Services were so impressed with that they've had it framed. Would you read it for me, first of all, please, and then we might discuss why you wrote this or what it means to you.
Yes, okay. Autism. Autism is a thing that some people have, including me. And I know people say autism is a bad thing, but it's not. You just got to know how to make it good. Sometimes I wonder what I would be like if I did not have autism, but also feel that autism has shaped me into the person I am, which must be a good thing, right? Autism certainly has its pros and cons. For example, some of the things that I struggle with include social situations, which I find really annoying, and I do worry about it quite a bit, and sometimes I'm not able to do things as well as others. But some of the good things about autism is that it has made me who I am, and on the bright side, there are people in the world who have autism that have made it far in the world.
That is fabulous, Brian. It's so positive and it's such a lovely piece of writing. Is there anybody that you think about that inspired you, I suppose, to write that? Is there anybody that would have a diagnosis of autism that would be, I suppose, that you'd look to and that you'd kind of say, God, they're my inspiration?
No, not really, but like I've heard the stories of people like Stephen Hawking and all that, and I kind of just follow along my own path, really.
Good. Well, I think I like the way that you're talking about grand. Okay, it's a bit of a struggle, but actually it's actually perfectly fine, and that it shapes me to be who I am. And I know that I haven't had much dealings with you to date, but I know, speaking to family members and stuff, you inspire them every day. Do you know? Brian, can I ask you, with regards to the future, moving forward, what aspirations do you have? Is there something that you'd love to be seeing yourself do in 20 years' time? Or
the truth is, I would think I would like to do journalism, but in some sense I don't really know what the future holds in me, and I suppose that can be a big thing for older people who have a disability or anything like that, because the future can be frightening for them.
Yeah. I suppose going back to your poem, you definitely have a way with words. You absolutely do. And I know, speaking to your mum, that I know that other people have recommended that perhaps moving forward you should consider writing some literature or some kind of a book or something.
Yeah.
Do you know? So definitely moving forward. And do you know what I find, Brian? I don't know, do you agree with me or not? The fact that you said earlier that you were diagnosed with a language delay when you were 4.
Yeah.
And like, I'm listening to what you've written there. It just goes to show that you can overcome and that you can move forward regardless of any diagnosis that you've been given, and showcase the talent if there's one there, which obviously very apparently there is.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you sensory processing issues, Brian. Do you have any sensory processing issues that might come up? Are there any, like, would you be tactile defensive, or do you find that certain noises would irritate you, or feelings on your clothes?
No, I've never had a problem with sensory processing issues.
That's good to hear. That's great. With regards to being a young person, with autism and DCD and a language delay and all lots of other things going on. Is there anything that you feel you could say to another teenager that perhaps will give them the motivation or give them the inspiration to carry on and to embrace their uniqueness?
The thing that I would say to any young person with autism out there is that just to be yourself. Don't hide who you are, but just be yourself. And it's definitely a long struggle because autism, for me at times, it's kind of a love-hate relationship, because like, so it has its benefits, like, but sometimes there's days where you have autism and you just think, why is it me that I have autism? But you just have to look on the bright side and don't let it stop you from doing what you want to do.
Tell me, Brian, what is your bright side? What do you look at when you look at the bright side?
When I look at the bright side is that I know that wherever I will go in the future, I know that I'll find something that I'll be happy with, and I know I have a great support team behind me, with thanks to my family and my friends.
Fabulous. And do you know what, Brian? I'm looking at you and I'm saying, actually, the good part for me is the fact that I'm listening to you. You're self-assured. You understand yourself. You trust yourself. You're a very capable young man, a very bright and intelligent young man. You are a person that is living your life to your full, and that you're really, really enjoying what you're doing, and that you're embracing yourself regardless of what it is, do you know?
Yeah.
I've one final question for you. Well, a couple of final questions for you, really. I know a couple of years ago that you were involved in spelling bee competitions, and that you got to the final of the Cork round of the RTE's programme, The Bee. I know that there were 63 schools involved at the time, and that you came out to the final. Tell me all about that experience.
It was a great experience because on the day of the competition, I just went in there thinking I'd give it my best shot, and as I kept getting spelling right and as the rounds passed and people were being knocked out, I was like, okay, I'm in with a chance. Like, and when it came down to the final two, it was a massive shock to me because I thought I'd never get this far, and when I got the spelling correct and when the other person didn't, I was over the moon, and my mom was very proud of me.
And I've no doubt you were very proud of yourself.
Indeed, yes.
Can I ask you, Brian, I know that because of that actually I know that the RT producers, I suppose, were very interested, particularly because you were a young man with challenges or with difficulties, and that you were also somebody that had been diagnosed with that said language difficulty or delay many moons before. I know that they came and that they actually observed you for 3 days, is that right?
They did. It was a very interesting time having the cameras on you all the time, and everything was a bit mad around the house, like, but
following you around everywhere.
Following me around. It was a different experience, but I have to say it was an interesting experience overall.
I'm looking at you right this minute, and you've got the most wonderful smile on your face. So I reckon that it was more than interesting. It must have been great fun, was it?
Always great. It was great fun, yeah. Good. Absolutely.
Good. Listen, Brian, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to, for anybody that's interested, I'm going to put up a copy of Brian's poem on the Facebook page, because I feel that the words are really, really inspirational, and that it might be beneficial for any young person out there, that if they need something to refer back to, or if they need something just to give them a little bit of hope or a bit of strength moving forward, that it can be something that they can refer back to and read and see that actually they're not on their own, and that they're great too. Is that okay with you, Brian?
Thank you very much.
Thanks a million, Brian. Now, I'm absolutely delighted to have Grace Cussen, mum to the lovely Brian Cussen, just to give her perspective on what it's like to be a parent of a child with autism, and to offer maybe strategies to other parents to ensure that they get their children to the same level that she has managed to get Brian to, really. Grace, thanks a million for coming on.
You're welcome, Sharon.
Grace, I suppose my biggest question to you is, what in the name of God have you done to get your young man to be so self-sufficient, so tolerant, so embracing of his own self, building his self-esteem and so on and so forth? I know lots of our parents talk about children facing into self-esteem issues and all that kind of a crack. Brian doesn't appear to have any issues around himself.
No, well, first of all, we're extremely proud of Brian and how far he's come in the years, all the obstacles he's overcome. You've heard him saying about the different diagnoses he's had and the umpteen visits to hospitals and checkups and operations he's come through. And he is the most emotionally intelligent person I have ever come across, because he'll know in an instant if there's any issue with you, if there's anything up. So he's great. That part of autism always annoyed me, when people would say, oh, they don't recognise emotions and they can't feel empathy. He's the most intelligent person in that respect that I've ever come across. But his coping skills, I suppose one of the things I felt from very early on was never to hide it and never to whisper about any of the conditions he had, because that's just part of who he is.
Good.
And I remember someone saying to me a few years ago when I was coming out of one of the hospitals, God, you're very open about it. You speak about it in front of him. And I said, well, why wouldn't I? It's part of who he is, and he's embraced it. And it's just who he is as a person. So he's learned his coping skills. And over the years, when we'd see anxiety levels rising, or if there was something that was bothering him, we tried to bring him to a place that he's as comfortable as possible and to reduce his stress. And that might be going into another room where it's quiet and just sitting down himself and relaxing. It might be doing breathing exercises to help him calm down. It might be simply just sitting and reading a book, whatever suits him at the time. And he's over the years learned which ones suit him at different times, and he's recognised in himself when the anxiety levels are rising to a point that he's not comfortable in a situation. He's now able to advocate for himself and remove himself from that situation, whether it's in a school or in a social setting. He's learning those coping skills, so it's great, really.
So I suppose realistically, Grace, what you're saying is that from a very early age, from the moment of diagnosis, you've built a kind of a toolbox of strategies. Really, you're looking at your belly breathing or your finger breathing. You're looking at, I suppose, different like being able to remove yourself actually from a situation.
I think that's one of the most important ones. And as Brian gets older, it's even more important, because it's not socially acceptable to be so anxious in a room full of 100 or 200 boys that are your peers. So he's learned when that happens, there's an SNA in the school, there's a quiet room he can go to. He's learned to remove himself before it spills over into something else. Then so
that's a great strategy, even moving forward towards college and adulthood and all that kind of a crack. I know as well, Grace, a while ago that Brian did say that he does come and he talks to you about things.
Yes.
So I would assume that being able to speak or being able to name things for your child when they're young, in order that they can speak,
so
to
they
you
can identify with it.
Exactly. I suppose that's a very big part in how your family functions to support one another.
Yeah, and I mean, in social situations when he was younger, even if he needed a deep pressure hug or if he needed to catch your hand, I really didn't give a damn who was listening or who was watching, because that's what he needed at that time and place. And over time, he learns what is socially acceptable to do. And deep pressure hugs can be, for young or old, they can be brilliant. We all love those.
I know.
So they can be a great stress reliever in the right situation. So whatever, you learn to cope.
I suppose yourself, Grace, I know that you've gone and you've educated yourself and you've learned. Are there any kind of particular types of strategies or particular types of books or anything that you would recommend for other people, other parents, we'd say, when they're starting on their journey for autism with their child?
I think the most important thing you can do as a parent, if you've had a child with a diagnosis, is to network with other parents who may be a bit further along, be it that via Facebook page or a parents group, because you can become very isolated when parents will talk to you, or friends, family will talk to you, and if you start talking about a particular issue or a problem, people's eyes glass over after 5 or 10 minutes, because we all have our own problems, we all have our own issues. But when you're talking to someone who gets you and who understands it, and very often through other parents you can find out accidental information that is just part of a conversation, but you think, and I'm a great believer in going to any of the talks and things that are available, because even if you go to a 2-hour talk and take away a 5-minute tip, it's something that you might use long term. So it's networking with other like-minded people really is the best thing. And then I myself wanted to go back to college to do a disability course because it empowered me to know about assistive technology, to know about some of the rights that Brian would have. And I was able to advocate from a better viewpoint than going to doctors and therapists. And that really helped him and me.
Yeah. Another question, Grace, actually is with regards to yourself as a mammy. Are there any tips or strategies that you use to mind yourself? Because we're all busy moms. To children with multiple diagnosis, and it can be very tiring, very draining, very stressful. What do you do to mind yourself?
Chocolate is a big part of it for me. No, I think depending on any given day, finding literally 5 minutes in the day can be impossible sometimes when you're busy chasing appointments and looking up things that they need. But I do think even just going for a walk up the road for 5 or 10 minutes just to get headspace is good, or just sitting down with a good book, but just finding 5 minutes for yourself every day is great. And having a cup of coffee with a friend is the best therapy that anyone can have.
Good. Listen, Grace, thanks a million for agreeing to come on, for sharing your information and for sharing some of the strategies that you use with your son. I've no doubt that where Brian is concerned, that it is absolutely onwards and upwards, because he's an absolutely wonderful, inspirational, talented and capable young man.
Well, for a child who we were told initially would never even make primary school, he's bucked all the trends, and watch this space, he'll buck plenty more in time.
Thanks a million, Grace.
Cheers.
Now, I was lucky enough to meet with the gentleman, Bobby Byrne, at the Special Needs Toy Expose in Rochestown Park Hotel Sunday just past. He is the creator and the brain, I suppose, behind the new sensory pod. So here's what he had to say about his new product. So Bobby, can you tell me a little bit about your own family history and what your inspiration was for the sensory pod?
Yeah, Sharon, my first-born child, who's 10 now, Lewis, is on the spectrum, and we struggled with sleep solutions over the years, and you know, we, like every other parent out there, we fought hard to get the right thing that worked for him. I came up with the sensory pod, and it's worked a treat ever since for my boy.
Fabulous. Can I ask you, Bobby, with regards to the sensory pod, how exactly does it work? What kind of sensory inputs can people expect to see with this?
Yes, well, look, at the sensory pod, it's an interactive safe space that's 8 foot by 4 foot wide. It's got interactive mood lighting throughout in the ceiling and behind the stargazer mirror. Obviously, we can't guarantee that it works for every single child. It's trial and error, but it works. In my case, it works very well because my son gets a great sense of fulfillment out of having an enclosed, safe space.
Fabulous. I suppose it's important to note, Bobby, that even though it may or may not work for everybody, that anybody that is willing to trial it would be very aware of their own child's sensory needs anyway.
Absolutely. Like you learn these things as time goes on with equipment and trialing various pieces of equipment. Your child will be very quick to respond to it in either a pleasant or negative way.
Okay, and I suppose I'm thinking now of what you're saying about visual lighting and mood lighting right throughout and whatever. I suppose I'd be thinking then I'd be immediately linking that mood lighting and so on with a child that would perhaps visually stim, that would do a lot of spinning of wheels and cars and all that
correct.
Kind of a crap.
Yeah, correct. Even within the unit, for a child that has, touch sensitive issues, it's a touch panel, so you don't have to press buttons as such. You run your finger across the top of them and they're heat censored, so they pick up movement off your finger through the heat of your body. So yeah, it works wonders for us.
Perfect. Bobby, where would people access your information?
Well, we've gone digital, so we haven't brought any leaflets with us to the show today, so we'd ask people to go onto our page, The Sensory Pod on Facebook, or visit thesensorypod.ie, and you will get all the information you need. And there's also a live chat support on our website that runs 24/7.
Okay, so that's the Sensory Pod Facebook page, and sensorypod.ie is a website.
Correct.
Okay, and can I ask you, price-wise, what are people talking?
The starting price for the unit is 5,950.
Okay.
It's worth noting that the unit is CE certified and meets very high safety standards.
Okay.
The unit comes flat packed, so when it comes out to your home, we assemble it. The unit is sold by Murray Medical in Ayrton Road in Tala. We sell wheelchairs, we do all sorts of medical equipment, so we would be considered a prestigious medical company in the market.
Okay. And can I ask, I suppose, one final question, Bobby, with regards to the sensory pod, is it possible to customise the sensory pod to meet a person's individual needs?
Absolutely, within reason. We're very flexible and very versatile. We come from a technical background, myself also, so I'm very open to requests from parents. If I can't fulfil them, I'll very quickly let you know, but in terms of adding and improving the setup, yes, that is an option.
Okay, perfect, Bobby. Thanks a million for your chat today.
You're very welcome, Sharon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening in tonight, and myself, Anne-Marie Lewis and Sharon McCarthy will be back with you for episode 10 in a fortnight.
Thanks a million, guys. Tune in next time.
Don't give up on us, baby. Don't make the wrong seem right. The future isn't just one night.